Hello, comrades! Welcome back to the Liberation Hour. This is your host, Comrade Felicity, coming at you live from WRFU 104.5 Radio Free Urbana. Folks, we are back once again here in the studio, and I am so excited to go over the news with y'all today. Yes, it is Wednesday, November 19th, 7 p.m. here in Urbana, Illinois. And before we get things started off, let me go ahead and read us the disclaimer. WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign online community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU UCIMC. Folks, welcome back to the Liberation Hour. Yes, I am so excited to bring the news to you guys today. I am extremely excited to go ahead and just discuss what's been going on. It's been a couple weeks since I've been on the air, and so we have a lot to talk about. I have a few different news stories for you today, and then my segment is on 40 tips for anti-communists with Comrade William and Camilo from the APL. We're super excited to talk about this fun little humorous bit that we were kind of doing where we were discussing 40 tips for anti-communists that was written by a retired party member as a funny a joke in the party, and we figured it would be fun to bring it to you guys and discuss it further. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read us our first story. So for the first story of the night is on the military operations in Venezuela, or in the ocean, the Caribbean Ocean, and it's been pretty interesting and frankly pretty upsetting to be watching this because as you may have been seeing on the news, the United States government has just been striking these different fishing boats that are Venezuelan citizens. They are claiming that these people are trafficking drugs with no such evidence to prove as much, which is pretty par for the course for the American government, but is nonetheless evil and disgusting considering the fact that these are just regular people. I'm frankly... I mean, it's disgusting to sit here and watch them try to sit here and talk to people and say, oh well, no, this is totally fine, everyone. There's no problem here. These people were just trafficking drugs. So the first news article I'm going to go ahead and read for us today is by Joe Summerlad, written on November 14th, which is a Friday, from The Independent. It is titled, Hegseth announces military Operation Southern Spear against, quote, narco-terrorists after Trump briefed on strike options. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has announced that the Trump administration's military intervention in Latin America to tackle, quote, narco-terrorists will be known as Operation Southern Spear. Lame. That's a lame name. I'm sorry. I'm going to be petty. That's lame. President Trump ordered action, and the Department of War is delivering, quoted from the secretary who wrote on X late Thursday. It seems that the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is really trying his darndest, his darn best to make this happen. It's interesting the fact that Trump in both, I guess I would say not all three elections, but definitely in the two elections that he ran against Hillary and Kamala Harris, he definitely ran himself as a peaceful dove, wanting to stay out of war and not be like a warmonger, which of course we know isn't true because that's not how American imperialism works. You can't just say, oh, we're not going to do war anymore. We're just going to continue the same imperialist mechanisms, but we're definitely not going to continue doing war. That's definitely not what we do. Obviously it was a big fat lie, but it's interesting to see just how belligerent they are being with this. And it's frankly disgusting because watching their base sit here and make excuses for this it's petty and gross. And I think that if we're going to sit here and allow the Trump administration to just bomb random fishermen's boats, We shouldn't, frankly. We shouldn't. There is no world in which this is okay. Not only is it not okay, it's murder. They're just outright murdering people to murder them. There is no evidence that any of these boats are trafficking drugs. And I mean, this is no different from how the Obama administration, the Biden administration, the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, like this is no different from how other administrations have run. But the Trump administration is just frankly more belligerent than previous administrations, and I would say it's slimy. It's frankly it's slimy to sit here and watch Democrats and Republicans try to make arguments and excuses for this, killing innocents. If another country bombed and murdered American citizens who were on a boat in the ocean fishing, that would mean war. That would mean devastation. The fact that the fact that the international community is not more outraged at this, the fact that the domestic community of Americans are not more outraged at this is so disappointing. Because folks, we're better than this. And I'm just gonna say it. I mean, Venezuelan people matter. Venezuelan people, we're all human beings, of course, and the fact that this is somehow being swept under the rug is necessary. I mean, it feels very racialized, frankly, because there's this assumption that it's only brown people that are smuggling in drugs and doing terrorism. When it is this white supremacist country that is not only consuming the drugs, Pete Hegseth, I'm looking at you, buddy, but is also doling out so much violence. These are just regular fishermen. And you know what? If they had drugs, I don't care. There is absolutely no reason to bomb them. Absolutely none. There's a reason why this economy, this market has become so prolific. There's a reason why it is so it's so saturated, and it's because we have just completely destroyed many of these economies to a point in which people have to turn to other means to make money, to survive. I'm not saying that drug cartels are a good thing. They aren't. Obviously, drug cartels are in many ways forming the same institutional violence that many of our imperialist countries are doing. I mean, I think of like Pablo Escobar and how he was just as terrible and disgusting as any world leader. He was a tyrant and a terrible person. But there's a reason why people get into selling drugs. It's not just, I'm going to go sell drugs. I don't have anything to do on this fine Tuesday afternoon. No, people get into these things for a reason. And it's disgusting to sit here and watch people say, well, it's fine, it's fine to bomb these boats and everything because they were smuggling in drugs. First of all, you don't know that. None of us know that. They are lying. They are just lying to our faces about it. And second, even if they were, it is absolutely unacceptable that this is the course of action that our government is taking. Absolutely unacceptable. And so I want to read part of the statement that the American Party of Labor made on U.S. aggression against Venezuela. Okay, so the American Party of Labor condemns the continued campaign of aggression waged by the Trump administration against the the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The recent bombing of Venezuelan civilian fishing boats by the U.S. naval forces, the imposition of inhumane economic sanctions, and the baseless accusations that Venezuela has become a center for fentanyl production constitute a grave escalation in Washington's war on the Venezuelan people. These actions, carried out under the false banner of, quote, national security, and, quote, the fight against drugs, reveal once again the naked imperialist ambitions of the United States. The Trump administration's policy has never been about democracy or human rights. It is a campaign of economic and military coercion intended to overthrow the legitimate government of President Nicolas Maduro and to restore U.S. domination over Venezuela's oil, natural resources, and political future. The bombing of civilian fishing vessels, ordinary workers seeking to feed their families, exposes the barbaric character of this campaign. It is an act of state terrorism meant to instill fear among the Venezuelan people and to demonstrate that the United States will stop at nothing to impose its will on a sovereign nation. Equally outrageous are the recent false claims made by the Trump administration accusing Venezuela of serving as a hub for fentanyl production and trafficking. These fabrications, unsupported by any credible evidence, and the recent invention of the word narco-terrorists, are intended to justify further sanctions and military encirclement under the guise of a, quote, counter-narcotics operation. In reality, they are of the same well-worn script used by the United States to rationalize aggression, from the weapons of, quote, mass destruction lies used to invade Iraq to the, quote, humanitarian intervention pretexts used around the world. The much-lauded principles of the United States are and always have been nothing more than a mask for imperialist greed. The bombing of civilian fishing boats and the slanderous accusations of fentanyl production are the acts of a decaying empire lashing out at a people determined to chart their own course. So that was part of the statement made by the American Party of Labor on the aggression against Venezuela, and I think that it was very concise. It is straight to the point, and it is very biting. And it's true. More than anything, it's true. Frankly, it's disgusting to think that people really do believe that this is that. Here's the thing. I'm just going to say it. Narco-terrorist is a racialized term because it's basically all but saying that people in Latin America are just drug dealers who want to make fentanyl and sell it to your children and everything. I mean, we can see the rhetoric that's coming out of the Trump administration. This is the exact kind of this very much completely matches and lines up with exactly what they've been talking about with, quote, illegal people, illegal immigrants. Nobody's illegal on stolen land, first of all. Second, this is a term essentially saying if you, quote, look like someone who sells drugs, we have the right to kill you. And we can see this domestically with ICE taking people who maybe who look brown, but who may have been born here in the United States, but they don't care because the Supreme Court has said that it's fine to racially profile people now. So, I mean, it's disgusting, it's gross, it's and hands off Venezuela, point blank, hands off Venezuela. This is a naked attempt, as the American Party of Labor statement has said, to reassert dominance over their oil and their natural resources for our own gain. And that's just the truth of it, folks. And we need to be honest about this. If we ever want to challenge the powers that be, if we ever want to challenge the bourgeois government, then we need to recognize that this is an act of aggression, not for the protection of the American people, but for the protection of capital and for the maintaining of capital. This is the sign of a dying empire, and we must seize this moment, and we must protect and support our Venezuelan comrades who are currently just trying to survive. And support each other in the struggle against the bourgeois class. And so moving on to the next story. This is on the government shutdown. Now, I'm sure everyone has been seeing so much about this. It's pretty ridiculous. Basically, from the Associated Press, President Trump signs government funding bill ending the shutdown after a record 43-day disruption. President Donald Trump signed a government funding bill Wednesday night, ending the 43-day shutdown that caused financial stress for federal workers who went without paychecks, stranded scores of travelers at airports, and generated long lines at some food banks. The shutdown magnified partisan divisions in Washington as Trump took unprecedented unilateral actions, including canceling projects and trying to fire federal workers, to pressure Democrats into relenting on their demands. The Republican Party, the Republican president, blamed the situation on Democrats and suggested voters shouldn't reward the party during next year's midterm elections. Quote, "So I just want to tell the American people, you should not forget this," Trump said. Quote, when we come to midterms and other things, don't forget what they've done to our country. The signing ceremony came just hours after the House passed the measure on mostly party line vote, on a mostly party line vote of 222 to 209. The Senate had already passed the measure on Monday. Democrats wanted to extend an enhanced tax credit expiring at the end of the year that lowers the cost of health coverage obtained through Affordable Care Act marketplaces. They refused to go along with a short-term spending bill that did not include the priority, but Republicans said that was a separate policy fight to be held at another time. Okay, so stopping there for a second. And all credit to the author of this, the three authors, Kevin Frecking, Joe Cappelletti, and Matt Brown. Basically, this government shutdown was pathetic, considering that the Democrats had literally all of the leverage, literally all of the support to continue to fight for meager, I'm going to call it what it is, very meager demands, and they just relented. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Everyone's talking about how Chuck Schumer is kind of the architect of this. Yes, however, understand this. The Democrats are, the Democratic Party at its core is a bourgeois party. They serve the interests of the bourgeois class. There is no reforming the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party has been around for over 100 years at this point. There is no changing what they stand for. Their core ideology, the core of the party, is this in service of capital and of the capitalist. They will never, ever actually put forward measures that prioritize the well-being of working people. I know that sounds very, I know that sounds like, well, that's such a decisive take. Why, it's not all black and white. Well, let's just look at their track record here for a second. If the Democrats wanted to fight for Medicare for all, which is an overwhelmingly popular policy that many, many Americans support, a majority of Americans actually support, they would, but they don't. If the Democratic Party wanted to fight for actual progressive policy that is overwhelmingly popular, they would, and it would be an easy slam dunk. Why aren't they doing this? Because it's not actually in their best interest. They are funded by the same donors and the same people that fund the Republican Party. They are controlled opposition. They are nothing more than controlled opposition, and if anything, an accomplice to the Republican Party. This whole government shutdown was the first time in, months since Trump got inaugurated and came back into office. This is one of the first times that they have done anything to fight back against these fascist, this fascist party. They could have done, they have been doing absolutely nothing. I mean, the one thing I can maybe think of that they kind of tried to do, which was absolutely nothing, was when Cory Booker sat there on the Senate floor for 25 hours and said absolutely nothing. He wasn't even filibustering a bill or anything. He was just there. What is that? That's nothing. This is me basically telling you, leave the Democratic Party behind, because they are going to continue to disappoint. I know that sounds that it's like, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? The alternative is forming a working class party outside of the Democrats, because the Democrats are nothing. The Democrats, folks, are not going to save you. They have continued to show that they are not going to save you. Chuck Schumer, let's go ahead and look at this list of Democrats who capitulated, who decided to reopen the government. And this is Senate Democrats who, even though Chuck Schumer voted no, don't get it twisted. This was 100% his little project. But I mean, Democrats, especially the more right-wing ones, which most of them are right-wing, they've been wanting to do this. So let's take a look. John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, Catherine Cortez Mastro of Nevada, Angus King of Maine, Dick Durbin of Illinois. Hey, Dick. Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire. Tim Kaine of Virginia. Jackie Rosen of Nevada. Jean Shaheen, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, of New Hampshire. These are some of the Senate Democrats who voted to reopen the government. And this is not me saying we need to primary them. No, this is me saying we need to leave this freaking party behind because they are nothing. They are not doing anything for us. They will continue to disappoint us because they don't actually work for working people. You know who they work for? They work for billionaires. They work for rich people. They work for capital. They do not fight for working people's interests. They do not actually fight for labor. They don't fight for the rights of people. If they wanted to, they would. That's what I'm saying. This is very par for the course with how the Democrats operate. They do not care. They never will. We need to leave this party behind, and I will continue to repeat this. And I know that it's hard, especially with our boomer parents and our Gen X parents and all these people who want to say, well, no, we just need to vote in people who are better. Okay, we have voted in AOC. We have voted in people like the Squad and everything. And what have they done? What have they done? Answer. I mean, obviously, I'm sitting in the room alone. Nobody. But my point here is that it doesn't even matter if you have a progressive caucus in the Democratic Party. They are still controlled opposition. They still work for the same people. Even if these individuals like AOC are not directly funded by AIPAC, they are still working for a party which is. And so it really doesn't matter if AOC thinks that what's going on in Gaza is a genocide, because the party doesn't really care. And this brings me to the last story of the night before I go ahead and play everyone the first 30 minutes of my segment with Comrade Camilo and William on the 40 tips for anti-communists. From The Guardian, the U.S. military is planning for divided Gaza with, quote, green zones secured by international and Israeli troops. I think you mean the Israeli occupying force. So we're going to be discussing, once again, the genocide that's going on. We also, please, folks, don't forget the genocide that's going on in Sudan as well. Do not forget Yemen. Gaza is only one place which is currently suffering under this crushing imperialist weight. Understand that it's not only Gaza, but still not just all eyes on Gaza, but we need to be actively mobilizing around these issues on Gaza, on Sudan, on Yemen. And so, continuing on, the U.S. is planning for the long-term division of Gaza into a, quote, green zone under Israeli and international military control, where reconstruction would start, and a, quote, red zone to be left in ruins. Foreign forces will initially deploy alongside Israeli forces in the east of Gaza, leaving the devastated strip divided by the current Israeli-controlled, quote, yellow line, according to U.S. military planning documents seen by The Guardian and sources briefed on American plans. Quote, ideally, you would want to make it all whole, right? But that's aspirational, said a U.S. official, speaking on condition of anonymity. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be easy. In the Guardian article, there is a map showing how they're going to divide the Gaza Strip. The U.S. military plans to raise serious questions about Washington's commitment to turning the ceasefire announced last month into an enduring political settlement with Palestinian rule across Gaza, which was promised by Donald Trump. Yeah, fat chance. Plans for Gaza's future have been shifting at a dizzying rate, reflecting a chaotic and improvised approach to resolving one of the world's most complex and intractable conflicts, and providing aid including food and shelter to 2 million Palestinians. After weeks in which the U.S. promoted reconstruction in the form of fenced-in camps for small groups of Palestinians referred to as alternative safe communities, Those plans were dropped this week, the U.S. official said. That's a snapshot of a concept that was put forth at a certain time, the U.S. official said. They've already moved on from that. Humanitarian organizations who have repeatedly raised major concerns about the ASC model said on Friday they had yet to be notified of the change of plans. Without a workable plan for an international peacekeeping force, the withdrawal of Israeli troops in large-scale rebuilding, Gaza risks slipping into limbo after 2 years of a devastating war. Okay, stopping there for a second. Folks, do not be deceived by this. This is still a genocide. I don't care what the Trump White House says. I do not care what the Democrats say. I do not care, least of all, what the Israeli government is saying about this. They are still going to be killing Palestinian people. They are still going to. This is a very thin facade of what is essentially a plan to colonize the Gaza Strip and to either push all of the Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip or kill them. Point blank. This is not necessarily a mask-off moment, but considering that they were thinking about putting them in camps, I'm sorry. That's no. We've already seen how badly that works out. Let's just not do that. The fact that they are even considering it is really concerning, to say the least. But unsurprising, considering that this is once again a fascist dictatorship. So, you know, and when I'm reading about this and I'm looking at what's going on here, all I can really say at this point, with a decisive tone, frankly, is that this is simply a plan to, as I said, colonize the Gaza Strip and use it as, you know, it's very good real estate for rich people, and I can't believe what they have done to the Palestinian people. I'm speechless. We have been covering this for months now since I started the show. I've been talking about Palestine since July when I started going on air, and it is so disheartening to watch this, because there is absolutely no way that America and Britain, two of the most disgusting, bloodthirsty imperialist forces, can be trusted to take care of this problem of genocide, considering that they have been the ones who have been perpetrating it and helping to carry it out and aiding and abetting the Israeli government in doing this for years at this point, 2 years, and have continued to support Israel for decades before that in oppressing the Palestinian people. I don't care what they say. This is still a genocide. They are still going to continue the genocide. And do not be deceived into thinking that this is some kind of that this is some kind of solution. This is not a solution. This is not a solution, folks. This is a death sentence. They are going to continue to murder Palestinian people. They are going to continue to oppress Palestinian people. This is not even this is not even with consideration from Palestinian voices who have been suffering under this genocidal campaign for 2 years now. No, this is just straight up colonization, and this is point blank. I have no other words other than to say, do not trust this. Continue to fight and to protest and to give money and donations to Palestinian families who are trying to survive, and continue to make your voice heard, and do what you can and do what you must to support our Palestinian comrades, because this is no solution. This is only a continuation of the genocide. I don't care what anyone says. The American government, the American way at this point has been to do genocide against indigenous people. That's how this country was founded. So, no, I do not accept any of this, and I really urge everyone to continue to stay educated and active on this situation. Do not let this slip out of your mind. Do not let this slip out of your heart. Okay, and so it is now 7:30, and so I'm going to go ahead and play the first 30 minutes of my segment with Comrade Camilo and Comrade William on the 40 tips for anti-communists. This is a super fun episode. If you want to listen to the rest, you can go onto my YouTube channel at Comrade Felicity or Communist Bananas, and you can listen to the full segment. This was about an hour and a half. It was super fun, and I cannot wait to show it to you guys for all to listen. And without further ado, enjoy. Okay, welcome back to the show, Comrade Camilo, and welcome to the show for the first time, Comrade William.
Thank you.
Happy to be back.
Yeah,
Happy to be back, and for such an important thing here.
For such an important episode, we're going to be going over 40 tips for anti-communists, which I think when Comrade Camilo suggested this episode, I got very excited because I think this is going to be super fun. And just a nice, I guess, a lighthearted switch up from what we've been covering these last few weeks. So this is going to be really good.
Well, no, Comrade Felicity. No. This is very serious now. I mean, there's a lot of anti-communism out there.
There is.
And there's a lot of really awful anti-communism out there. So we want to be helpful.
Yes,
if they're going to do anti-communism, let them do it right.
Let them do it right.
And who better to help them than the communists themselves?
Perfect. Well, we're here to help. Yes, we're here to help the anti-communists with their arguments. I would hate for them to be posing bad arguments to us. I would much rather have a successful conversation on this. So,
let me say, this was actually written by a since retired APL party comrade, and I don't know if they want their name out there, so I'm not going to say it. Okay. But just if they're listening, this is your job, this is your work, all rights are yours, comrade.
This is for you. This is for you, comrade name redacted. We are. I can go ahead and get us started off, but first, if you guys want to give yourself a little introduction, to reintroduce yourself, Comrade Camilo, and to introduce yourself to the show for the first time, Comrade William. Whoever wants to go first.
William, you go first.
Hello, my name is William. I am from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I'm a new member of the APL, and I'm happy to be on the show for the first time.
I am Camilo Lasso. I'm the national chair of the APL. Happy to be back for the second time. And to prove that here at APL, we are the laughing Hojaists.
Yes, we are. This is the laughing Hojaists. That's what our little ragtag team is called today. And so for this episode, we're going to, as I said, going over 40 tips for anti-communists. There will be some more serious discussion on some of these, but this is supposed to be a much more lighthearted episode, just a discussion around a lot of the talking points. We may not get through all of them, but we're going to do our best to do that. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'm going to read the first one, and we'll kind of switch off. So it can go like me, William, Camilo, whatever way we want to do it. But so for the first tip for anti-communists, number one, constantly insisting that Marxism is discredited, outdated, and totally dead and buried. Then proceed to build a lucrative career on beating that supposedly dead horse for the rest of your working life. Thoughts?
Well, no, these are all true. All of them are true.
Yes.
But there are people who have made careers out of being professional anti-communists.
Someone that comes to mind is like Robert Conquest.
Yeah, yes. Actually, what I really meant to say, there's some people who made a career of being not only professional anti-communists, but like professional former communists.
Yes.
And there were a lot of those people around, like Whittaker Chambers and Alger Hiss and who was the Italian guy, Ignacio Siloni, during the 50s and 60s. But yeah, it can be a lucrative career.
Yeah, I think of people like I don't know. I don't think Noam Chomsky is like a former communist. He's more of an anarchist.
Yeah.
but I would say like his work on manufacturing consent, of course, is very good. But I don't think it's particularly remarkable when you look at, like Michael Prenti, I believe, wrote a similar book about a similar topic, if not the same. And also, I don't know, when I think of like Noam Chomsky's like discussion around like how media manufacturers consent, I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, that's how capitalism maintains itself, under like of course billionaires are going to own the press and everything.
Yeah, I've never encountered professional anti-communists before, but I'm sure I will eventually. And it'll be a bit bewildering, and I guess I'll just move on.
Yeah. They're always in my comment sections.
Oh yeah.
So so yeah.
Seriously,
Wow.
I mean, people can get away with stuff when they're dealing with fields that involve Soviet studies or anything that deals with communism. They can get away with stuff that in any other area of academia they'd be laughed out of the lecture hall.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, no, that's definitely true. So let's move on to number two. Who wants to read number two?
I'll do number two.
Okay.
Remember, any unnatural death that occurs under a communist regime is not only attributable to the leaders of the state, but also Marxism as an ideology. Ignore deaths that occur for the same reason in non-communist states.
The big thing I think of is the famine of 1932 to 33 in the Soviet Union as compared to the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression in the United
Mm-hmm.
States. Every time we
Mm-hmm.
discuss these things, the famine is always seen as, well, first of all, there is the misinformation out there of the quote unquote Holodomor, which, as we know, was not actually a policy by the Soviet Union. There was no policy of starvation. Um, in addition, I think of the fact that at least the communists were trying to feed people. There were Bolsheviks who literally died because they gave all of the grain that was stored for something like this to the peasants because they knew that they would be there the next year to plant things to grow. Bolsheviks literally sacrificed themselves for this. I've never heard of American statesmen or anything of the sort doing that for the American people.
Someone, and I can't remember who off the top of my head, but it might be worth doing some research and finding it. But there was someone like 10 years ago who did um, the exact same thing that anti-communist historians do regarding the Holodomor, quote unquote, for the Dust Bowl, using the exact same faulty methods and faulty statistical analysis, and came up with like 10 million missing Americans. Where are the 10 million missing Americans? Roosevelt killed them. Roosevelt.
It was Roosevelt and his
Yeah.
wheelchair.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I think that especially when I think about like um, and I don't know if it was in Conquest's book or if it was in another one, but the 100 million number that also included Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, William, I heard you laugh at that.
Well, something
Yes,
that
yes.
you get is you get these numbers that are just absolutely insane. And for some reason, they love the number 60. Like Stalin killed 60 million of his own people. Two things immediately strike me with that. Well, first of all, they always make it a point to his own people. Are you saying like if he killed other people, it would be okay?
Yeah.
um, but 60 million. Okay, so 60 million people killed. That would be the equivalent of a major asteroid strike. That would be like an extinction level event. Because not only do you have the 60 million who are killed straight off, but imagine the millions of unburied corpses, disease. Imagine the disruption to the economy and the infrastructure. Who's growing food? Who's providing medical care and medical services? You're talking 60 million dead. You're talking, like I said, an extinction level event, equivalent to an asteroid strike.
Yeah, it's
What was
insane.
the what
What
was
was
the population of the Soviet Union at the time that they alleged this happened?
It was about like 170 million.
so that's
Wow, that's
like
a very large
I
percentage.
think about 170 million. And it grew. I mean, obviously, the people who say this, and I think we will get to it in the 40. The people who say this somehow are unable to account how the population of the Soviet Union managed to grow. Now, yeah, you got to take into account that borders shifted. Yes, there were shifting territories at the end of both world wars, but also consider, it takes a microsecond to kill a human being. It takes 9 months to create a new one. And it's going to take at least 15 years for those new ones to start creating new ones of their own. So, how did the population rise?
Well, I guess we'll never know.
But
I,
let's go on. Let's go
I,
on. We're going to deal with all this fun stuff.
oh yeah. Okay, William, do you want to go ahead and read number 3?
Sure. Communism or Marxism is whatever you want it to be. Feel free to label countries, movements, and regimes as communist, regardless of things like actual goals, stated ideology, diplomatic relations, economic policy, or property relations.
I think of Venezuela here because I don't believe Venezuela is actually a communist country. I just think they have socialized policy, like social policy, like around nationalization, but I don't think that they're a communist. Am I wrong here?
No, I agree. I mean, they are certainly progressive. They're social democratic. The entire basis of Chavismo and the Bolivarian Revolution was what they termed 21st century socialism, which not only we but a lot of comrades in Latin America have criticisms of. So yeah, it is definitely a popular and progressive regime, but it's not communist. It's not Marxist-Leninist.
Yeah. And I also think that like the labeling of communist, well, I also, okay, so part of the reason that we wanted to do this episode is because of anti-communism week in the Trump White House, which,
I didn't hear about that.
oh yeah, it's a thing. And I think it's a little bit hilarious, honestly, because when it comes to these anti-communism week and all of these different kinds of like that one website that's like victims or survivors of communism. Um, I don't know. They always leave out just how brutal imperialist countries have been. Not to say that there haven't been brutal policy or bad things that have happened in communist countries. But I don't know. Imperialist countries love to inflate numbers when knowing that their own skeletons and their own closets are much more plentiful, if you will. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think that one, it's interesting. It is whatever. And a lot of Americans just really don't know what Marxism is.
Um, I am not a big fan of Gus Hall, the longtime leader of the Communist Party USA, but I once heard him say something in a radio interview, which stayed with me.
Hmm.
So the interviewer asked him, "Why is there no socialism in the United States?"
Hmm.
And Gus Hall responded, "Well, let me answer your question in a way that it answers itself. So instead of asking me, why is there no socialism in the United States? Ask me, why is there no socialism in the country with the most advanced, developed, and all pervasive bourgeois media in the world?"
No, that's a good answer. That's very true. It kind of brings it back to what I was talking about in the first point, where it's like, it's like, of course, like socialism is going to be very hard to build when people don't even, know what it is, because consent has been manufactured to a point where like we don't really know, like reality is kind of like in like this weird, it's like I don't know. I always talk about the Naomi Klein book.
Mm.
Um Doppelganger, but and because I think it's so true, like the way she talks about this like inverted reality that a lot of like right wingers kind of live in, that like
Yeah.
because like a lot of the media, like mainstream media, just lies. And it's like that goes for liberals too, like MSNBC, CNN, all of these different like quote unquote liberal media news outlets just lie to you. Like especially think about like the genocide in Gaza, like they will just lie to you about Israel. And then when people see like videos of dead kids on their phone, they're like, well, what the fuck is this? And it's like, well, that's reality, actually. Of course you weren't seeing it in like, in mainstream media because they don't want you to see that. Um, So I can go ahead and read number 4. If there was a conflict involving communists, the conflict and all ensuing deaths can be laid at the feet of communism. Be careful when applying this to World War II. Fascist movements who fought against the Soviets or communist partisans are fine, but try not to openly praise Nazi Germany. Save that for private conversations if you must do so.
Actually, might I suggest let's go through some of these and not necessarily explicate each and every one because these are great.
Yeah.
Let's just keep on going.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, Comrade Camilo, you want to read number 5?
Number 5, you decide what Marxism really means and who the rightful representatives of communism were. Feign interest that Trotsky was somehow robbed of power by Stalin, despite the fact that you hate him as well.
I hate the Trotskyites so much. I don't think people realize how much of a hater I am. Oh my gosh. Yeah. William, do you want to read number 6?
Sure. Constantly talk about George Orwell. Quote from Animal Farm or 1984. Do not worry about the fact that Orwell never set foot in the Soviet Union, and both of those books are novels.
Yep. Yep. I don't know.
I love it when people throw Orwell at me. I once had someone say to me, "You need to learn history. Start with Orwell." And I responded, "Okay, well, you need to learn about Eastern Europe. Start with Bram Stoker."
Orwell was not a historian. He wrote that's not real.
And what people don't get is it was meant to be a science fiction satire about post-war Britain.
1984 was?
Yes.
Really?
You want to know who Big Brother really was?
Who?
There was this guy who had a kind of correspondence school, like earn your degree at home kind of thing. And he would put out these ads that would have his ads for his correspondence school that would have his face, and underneath it would say, "Let me be your father." Well, when the guy died, his son took over the business, and his son was considerably younger, but he continued the ads for the correspondence school with now the son's face saying, "Let me be your big brother." That's Big Brother. And everyone in Britain in 1948 knew it. Everyone in Britain in 1948 got the joke.
That's funny. Yeah, no, of course not, because we don't have that context. Well, that's interesting. So wait, whose turn is it? It's number 7. I forgot who just went. Oh, it's mine? Okay.
Oh, yours.
Okay. Quote, massive death tolls without regard for demographics or consistency. 3 million famine deaths, 7 million, 10 million, 100 million deaths total. You need not worry about anyone checking your work, which is good for you seeing that you haven't done any.
Okay. I love the next one. Number 8. Everyone ever arrested under a communist regime was most likely innocent of any crime. Communists only arrested harmless poets and political prophets who had a beautiful message to share with the world.
Yeah, Trotsky had a beautiful message to share with the world, guys. He wasn't even arrested, he was just exiled. Like, that one's especially frustrating, especially because like when you look at the history of like the Moscow trials, like there was actually a plot. Like there was a conspiracy. Was it handled the best? No, but there was one. Like,
well, the American ambassador to the Soviet Union at the time, Joseph E. Davies, he filed reports because he sat in. He was actually a witness in the not a witness, but you know what I mean. He was a spectator in the spectator part of the courtroom to the Moscow trials, and he wrote a report back saying, "On the basis of my 30 years as a trial lawyer, I'm inclined to believe these confessions."
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting to hear. Like I think it's interesting that like when Americans hear like an American like back up like Soviet policy or things that the Soviets did, especially Americans with expertise, all of a sudden more Americans are like, well, maybe they, I don't know, but it's like, I don't know, maybe they were just doing things correctly and it's not always like done in America. Like, I don't know. I think like Americans just have this like this very exceptionalist view of the world. And I say this as an American. But number 8, William, it's your turn.
Didn't Kamala just read
Number
this
nine.
one?
Number
Oh,
9.
oh, number 9. Sorry, number 9. My bad.
Nine. Okay. Everything Stalin did or didn't do had some sinister ulterior motive. Everything.
Ah, yes.
And following up immediately. Number 10, keeping with the spirit of number 9, remember that Stalin was an omnipotent being, perhaps an incarnation of the Hindu deity Vishnu, who had full awareness of everything going on in the Soviet Union and total control over every occurrence which took place between 1924 and 1953. Everything that occurred during that time was the will of Stalin. Stalin knew the exact details of every criminal case that took place during that era, and out of his boundless cruelty had tons of innocent people shot for no reason, regardless of where they were or their position in life. Being omnipotent, he was not dependent on information passed up from tens of thousands of subordinates.
Yep, I think that one sums it up pretty well on how most people view Stalin. I actually talked about this in my episode last week on Judaism with Comrade Misha, where we discussed like I was talking about how the view of Stalin, especially with the way like I think a lot of like anti-Stalin like Trotskyites kind of think of him, is like he's either like he's both like this conniving like evil mastermind who were like had been plotting from the beginning to like take things over and become a dictator, but he's also this like evil brute who like is like stupid and like can't do anything, and like what was like the most like degenerate guy or whatever. Like there's like this dual narrative of him being like both like an evil conniving mastermind and also like a brutish like I don't know like dictator.
I wonder if there's some. Sorry. I wonder if there's some element of a sort of mythological cultural consciousness of what of the idea of a dictator, because it's almost as though when I hear the word dictator, thoughts come to mind which are not really rooted in any sort of history at all.
Yeah, no, I mean they're definitely.
It's like a magic word.
Yeah, well, it's like once again like the Conquest book that came out in I believe 1984. Is that correct, Camilo?
There's several. He wrote several.
Well, the first one that he wrote about
Well, the first one was 68, The
oh,
Great
first
Terror.
one?
That
Okay.
was 68. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's one that he wrote in the 80s, I believe, that came out right before they opened the Soviet archives. Um, and I think it's really interesting because after the Soviet archives were opened, literally everything that he wrote was like disproven.
Yeah.
But that book is still cited today as a source for people to talk about when people are being anti-communist. Which I'm like, I mean, that's pathetic, first of all, because there's actual like sourcing that proves that you're wrong. But second, it just shows just how much people are willing to, or like, especially like anti-communists are committed to just saying shit that isn't true. In the spirit of being an anti-communist. There's absolutely no theoretical or historical basis for any of this.
I can tell you something really scurrilous about Conquest if you're interested.
Sure.
Speaking of degenerates, oh God, there was this British poet, and damn it, now his name is escaping me, but it was this Philip Larkin. That was his name, Philip Larkin. So there was this British poet in the 50s and 60s named Philip Larkin, and he was a good friend with Robert Conquest. And after they both died, Larkin's letters were published, and among them was a letter from Philip Larkin to Robert Conquest saying, uh, uh, please send over any copies of Thrash and Discipline that you may have that have lost their stimulation for you. These are sadomasochistic torture porn. that had pictures of schoolgirls getting whipped.
Oh God, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's insane. Well, I don't know. Robert Conquest, what the hell?
Oh, and then Larkin actually said, "Yeah, I think that thrash is the tops, or rather the bottoms. The bottom, yuck, yuck." Yeah, these are the people that are. This is the guy who's cited as your specialist on the Soviet Union.
I can't. This is so ridiculous. Okay, okay. Number 11, who's up? Is it me?
I think it's me.
Okay, go ahead, Kamala.
Constantly attack communist regimes for actions that occur in capitalist regimes up to this very day.
No need for further comment on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, William, number 12.
Claim that Marxism is utopian because of its description of a possible future society. Alternately claim that Marxism failed because it never gave a detailed description of how a communist society would look. Do not pay attention to the massive contradiction here.
There's a lot of that. Just don't pay
Oh, yeah.
attention. Just don't look hard enough. Don't worry, guys.
And here's another one. Number 13. Start referring to Marxism as being some kind of religious faith, messianic, or whatever other spiritualist bullshit you can come up with. When people point out that you can draw similarities between virtually any political ideology and other religions, ignore them.
Yep. I don't know. I love listening to like venture capitalist types and those like influencers who like are like, into crypto and everything. They talk about it like it's a religion. They talk about like their meme coin or whatever. Um, and like being a capitalist as if it's some kind of like religious doctrine. When it's probably the most idealist thing out there and also the fakest thing out there. Like, I don't know. The first time I was ever actually introduced to Bitcoin, I was in the seventh grade. This is a little anecdote about my life. I lived in Florida at the time, and I had a history teacher who, looking back, he was like a massive conservative. But at the time, I didn't realize this. He also, additionally, so first he was talking to us about Bitcoin. He said, he was like, when I was in college, this thing called Bitcoin came out, and I bought a couple of them because I thought it was cool or whatever it was. My memory might be escaping me a bit on this, but essentially what he said is, I could be a millionaire now because Bitcoin is like worth a ton of money. At the time, of course, I'm 12 and I'm like, what the heck is Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Like, that's not real money. Um, and then he proceeded to give us a description of what socialism was. And he said that Bernie Sanders wanted to split up the country into different districts like the Hunger Games. So that's the middle.
What?
Yep, yep. Mr. Pat, if you're listening, I remember you. I remember that history lesson. So yeah, that was my first introduction into socialism and communism. He also drew a chart and he was like, this is what communism is. It's that let's say you're a farmer and there's another farmer and you're farming and the other farmer decides to slack off and then you produce all of like the goods. Well, then you're forced actually by the state to split them up between you two evenly, even though he didn't do any work. That was my first introduction.
I'm glad to see it had an effect.
Yep. It was negligible. Okay, I will read number 14. Remember the 1-2 anti-communist attack. Attack the post-Stalin system on economic grounds and claim it just doesn't work. Since an informed opponent will likely point out that actual socialist economics did indeed work under the Stalin era, and in fact work very well, attack that era on human rights grounds. Yeah, that's a pretty common one, I would say. And then I can also read number 15. 2 words, human nature. Oh, I have a lot to say about this. Okay, I'll finish the thing though. What is human nature? For your purposes, human nature is a quick explanation why political ideas or systems don't like are wrong. Okay, I have a lot to say about this. Recently, my mother was visiting me. And this is an argument she made to me about human nature. And because we both read a similar book on biology and psychology. And granted, I haven't read this book in many years. It was about 700 pages. And I would listen to it while I was hiking. And I think a lot of people who like to cite books around like or things around human quote unquote human nature, I think don't realize just how dynamic human nature is. And this idea of like human nature being one monolithic thing that will never change, and that is just not compatible with quote unquote political ideas that you don't agree with. It's a piss poor explanation, honestly. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Well, you know what? Not only is it a piss poor explanation, but you could even turn that around. You could turn that totally upside down and say, yeah, human nature. And human nature is cooperation. We are social animals. The key to our evolution and our advancement has been division of labor and cooperation. So that's human nature for it.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of noticed when I started getting into Marxism is I was like this idea of like primitive communism and the ways in which they distributed the labor. It's because they had to, because they didn't have a surplus and there was no other way that humans could survive. Like humans could technically survive on their own if they wanted to. But frankly, back in like the days before industry and before markets and well, not markets, but specifically like surplus and everything, how else was a human meant to survive without other humans in a tribe? Like that this was because again, we are social animals. We're also, for lack of a better term, we're very squishy. We're not like a tiger or bears in that we have super sharp claws or anything like that. We need others, but we do have huge brains, and we need others to be able to work together on these different ideas that we have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we don't have sharp fangs or razor claws or talons, and we don't have the speed of a cheetah or the strength of a polar bear. What we have is a brain and thumbs, and a brain and thumbs together with others that have brains and thumbs.
Yeah.
That's the most powerful weapon you can imagine.
I mean, clearly we've, created climate change, so that's sucks.
Ah.
Um, okay, who wants to read number 16?
I think it's your turn, William.
Okay. Bolshevik revolutions were carried out with violence and bloodshed. Bourgeois revolutions were all carried out by democratic referendums, and there was no violence whatsoever.
Well, absolutely. I mean, having your head chopped off or being dipped in boiling tar and feathered and then hanged. That's just
Yeah,
a Tuesday.
that's
Yeah,
not
it's nothing.
violent. That,
No.
that's the least violent thing I could have ever thought of. Um, yeah, no, that's ridiculous. Let's see, number 17. Use words like freedom and democracy constantly. Do not accept any challenges to define these terms. Yeah, that one's pretty self-explanatory, honestly. That one's. All right, Kamala, do you want to read number 18?
18. Communists can be for or against whatever is popular in your particular area. If you are preaching to a right wing crowd, communists are for degeneration and homosexuality. If you are preaching to a more mainstream audience, communists were homophobic. Essentially, communists are for moral degeneration and puritanical prudery at the same time. Again, do not notice the contradiction.
Of course, not at all. I was actually listening to a really interesting video about like homosexuality and the laws around that in Soviet Russia, and just the Soviet Union in general. And it's actually pretty interesting what the consensus was on things like being trans in the Soviet Union. Because it was actually pretty progressive, all things considered, about when it came to like trans people. Now, gay men, it was much more regressive. I would say there was much more regressive ideas and policy. And of course, we also have to acknowledge that, in 1934, they did make homosexuality illegal. But the reasonings for this are actually a lot more a lot more in depth than I think people realize, and have aren't just because they hate the gays. It's really because from what I understood from this person's expose on it, is that at the time they were dealing with the Moscow trials, or like this giant conspiracy basically was going on. And at the time, there's actually a culture in Russia pre revolution and post revolution of like men meeting up at bathhouses and things,
Hmm.
and like kind of like cruising. And there was at the time a lot of men meeting up in large gatherings to do gay shit. And basically the Soviet government was like, all of these men are meeting up in one place. They must be plotting. That was like the, which is terrible, don't get me wrong, but when you look at it from that perspective, it's a little funny.
Well, I mean, the whole topic of homosexuality in the Soviet Union, I mean, that's the subject for a whole show
Oh yeah.
of yours. Um, but I mean, there was also some carryover from the 19th century. There was this idea that was kind of coming out of homosexual circles in Britain. The whole public school atmosphere of encourage the public school boys to get together with each other because you don't want them to get together with girls because girls are problems for their careers.
Of course.
That was extremely misogynistic.
Oh yeah.
And then there
Um,
was also, and this was wrong, but it was in the air. We're trying to understand here, not condone, but understand. There was also the association of homosexuality with fascism.
yeah, yeah, and it is it's obviously a wrong association, but it still was there, and it's something that we need to criticize. I would also say like the criticism of like the ways that the Soviets saw femininity versus masculinity. They saw more feminine men as a problem because they associated femininity with like domestic like basically the oppression of women in domestic labor. Um, and I think that's a very reductionist view, especially because people present so differently across the board. It's hard to say that someone, basically saying that someone can't be productive if they're presenting as more of a woman. Um, and they would say that women who were very masculine, or partaking in more like masculine presentation, were more along the lines of like what they associated with like this is good, this is productive, that you're being a good worker, which has a lot of problems, but that is like where that came from. It wasn't just because they were being woman haters or something. There was a reason why why that happened. Okay, so number 19. Constantly flog Stalin over the Molotov-Ribbentrop agreement while totally ignoring massive support and collaboration with Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan on the part of America, Britain, and France long before the war, and even after in some ways. As usual, do not allow your opponent to examine the context of the non-aggression pact.
Very few people even bother to look at what the text of the non-aggression pact was. And it was essentially the Soviet Union after a decade trying to interest Britain and France in forming an anti-Hitler alliance and having the door slammed in their face. And even at the time of Munich in 1938, the Soviet Union saying, "We are ready and prepared to march now and
Mm-hmm.
isolate Hitler, box him in and isolate him. We're ready to march now." But in order to do that, we're going to need permission to march through Polish territory because we need to get there. And Poland was, "Oh, you better not. You absolutely better not." Um, and it didn't happen. The Soviets were preaching collective security against fascism for the better part of a decade. And eventually got to the point that, I'm simplifying, but basically it got to the point where they said, okay, to hell with you guys. We'll cut our
Yeah.
own deal and look after ourselves.
Well, I mean, it's the fact that the capitalist imperialist powers didn't want to give the communists an inch, which of course was at the cost of millions of lives. Because this thing, it didn't have to, the Nazis did not have to get as powerful as they did. This was very preventable. If you look at like the fact that, appeasement and all of these different, these different aspects, like it's not like the Nazis were quiet about their anti-Semitic views and about their fascist ideology. They were very loud and proud about it. I mean, if you've heard a Hitler speech, you'll know. So it's like the fact that um, the Soviets were willing to like make a move and also do collective security um, as soon as what, like the early 1930s? Is that correct, Kamala?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, the Holocaust was so preventable. I don't think people realize just how preventable something like that was. Um, but it's the fact that the imperialist powers, frankly, were just as anti-Semitic and didn't see an issue with it until like it got to a point where no one could look away. Um, but number 20, William, do you want to go ahead and read number 20?
Sure. Praise the newfound freedom of Eastern Europe. Ignore the massive depopulation via migration, plunging birth rates, huge alcohol and drug problems, political instability, civil wars, ethnic cleansing, sex trafficking and child prostitution, organized crime, high suicide rates, unemployment, disease, etc. Who cares about all that when you have freedom of speech?
Period. I love my freedom of speech and not being able to eat. It's my favorite.
Well, I remember seeing. I don't think it was a meme, but it was something. It was, I think it was before the age of memes, but it was something rather similar that had an image of a Russian woman saying, "Under communism, I was forced to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, an engineer, a military officer, a diplomat. Now I have the freedom to be a phone sex operator."
Truly, this is yes. You know what, girl? You want to be a phone sex operator? Good for you. I'm not sure the communists were necessarily against that. Um, okay, number 21. Kamala, do you want to read that one?
Anyone constantly talk about the culture of fear in communist nations and about that knock on the door in the middle of the night. Ignore the kick in your door in the middle of the night, stick a shotgun in your back, and haul your ass out of bed, etc., because you're suspected of dealing, a common occurrence in the American war on drugs.
Yep. Uh, the age old, I would say like the age old image in my head is tanks going down like different roads in American suburbs
Yeah.
or especially black neighborhoods that they suspected of quote unquote being drug dealing neighborhoods. Number 22, attack communists for suppression of religion. Attack Islamic fundamentalists for not being secular. What contradiction? Yeah. Um, William, you want to read number 23?
Do not notice the irony that the US is currently fighting an incredibly expensive losing war against an opponent which it funded, supported, and even handed its first victory in Afghanistan.
Ah, you see, I was quite young when the war in Afghanistan was happening, so I don't have as much context for this one. I do know about it, of course, from study. But William, do you? I think we're around the same age. So, Kamala, do you have any like what do you remember of the war in Afghanistan and your perspective?
I remember the Afghan rebels, as they were known at the time, the Taliban, as we call them now, being hailed as these anti communist freedom fighters.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
And now they are obviously terrible. Um, and it's interesting. I mean, I think of the same thing with Hamas and Israel. You know, like Israel. basically helped fund Hamas because they thought they wouldn't be strong enough to be able to launch an attack or anything on them, and they were easier to control, which of course is not necessarily true when you're also putting an entire population under a policy of apartheid. So, interesting to say the least. I can go next for 24. Oh, did you have anyone have something to add? Nope.
Go
Okay.
for it. Go for it.
Number 24. What should you say when confronted with all of the continuing and often worsening problems in the world today and ask for a solution? Freedom. Repeat as necessary until your opponent goes away. All right, who wants to read 25?
25. Nothing from communists can be trusted. Unless it somehow works in your favor, a la Khrushchev's secret speech from 1956 or anything Trotsky wrote.
Once again, fuck Trotsky. All right, William, when we read number 26?
Yes. Communist leaders were paranoid for devoting so much time to security against counter-revolution. Ignore the mountains of evidence, including the restoration of capitalism in the East Bloc, that this threat was indeed real.
Yep.
It was.
Yeah, no, it was. Number 27. Communist regimes were never popular. If proof is presented in various cases to show otherwise, claim that the people were brainwashed. Make no effort to consider the budgetary and logistic constraints on such an undertaking. This is where I think of the illegal dissolution of the Soviet Union. Because for all the Soviet Union's problems, especially post-Stalin when Khrushchev took over and the consistent liberalization of the economy, I want to say that the Soviet Union was still a popular system amongst many people in the many Soviets. Is that true, Camilo?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And this brings us to number 28. Who wants to read this one?
I'll do it. 28. Communist propaganda is crude and primitive. If someone mentions Red Dawn, or worse, mentions the J. Edgar Hoover endorsed comic book series known as The Godless Communists, run away.
um, yeah, no, J. Edgar Hoover, I don't think people realize just how evil this man was. Like, literally, so I think of the fact that he had Fred Hampton brutally shot and murdered in his home next to his pregnant wife after he was drugged by an informant in the Black Panther Party. Um, but the fact is that the reason that they did this is because the Black Panthers were giving food to children. And in a memo published by the FBI, this was seen as one of the greatest threats to American capitalism. Although they didn't say capitalism in the memo, but that is essentially what was said. And so number 28, number 29. Praise secularism in the name of freedom and pluralism until faced with a communist, then play the religion card. This I think of Albania and Hoxha.
Uh-huh.
Yes. I think there's I heard someone say online one time, Camilo, that there was a policy of specifically targeting Islam in Hoxha's Albania. And it was apparently like a racist attempt or something of that sort. Is this true, or how should we contextualize this?
That's absolutely inane. Yeah, it was racist for former Muslims to criticize Islam, because that's what that's saying. Because Albania is a majority Islamic country, a majority Muslim country, and Hoxha himself was raised as a Muslim. Actually, kind of the main thrust of the anti-religion campaign was towards the Catholic Church, because the Vatican was seen as a power institution, and a power institution that had supported Italian fascism.
Interesting. That contextualizes it a lot more, because I had heard someone say that they were specifically targeting like Muslim names on these registries and saying that they had to change them because they were too religiously affiliated. Um, which I find is a little bit interesting considering that, once again, um, I'm not saying that this didn't happen, perhaps it did, but again, it was a majority Islamic country, so they're dealing with institutions of Islam in Albania. But as you said, they were mainly targeting Catholics and or the Catholic Church more specifically. And I also don't think that individual practice of religion was banned. Is that true?
No, not at all. Not at all. It was the social power of religion and the economic and political power of religion and the cultural power. The fact that Albania was coming out of millennia of patriarchy, and that patriarchy was very much tied to the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church and Islam as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I just wanted some clarification on that because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings around the religion policy in Albania. So William, do you want to read number 30?
Yes. Atrocities and other bad things that happen under non-communist regimes are the fault of individual bad people. Anything bad that happens under a communist regime is the fault of the ideology and the system, and Stalin.
Of course.
And Stalin, always.
When I was interviewing Grover he made this point in the interview that I think was so concise and true, where he was talking about I think it's called the anti-Stalin paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially saying that, like, no matter what you find in the Soviet archives or doing research on the Soviet Union, you must always maintain that Stalin was a brutish dictator who wanted to kill millions of people. If you don't, then you are essentially going against the entire paradigm which has been set in academia for generations.
Oh, yeah.
Very
much so.
Number 31. Being an anti-communist means not having to have any sort of ideological consistency whatsoever. Preach populist left-wing pseudo-socialism 90% of the time, and then compare the capitalist systems to Stalin's Russia, in quotes. In parentheses, if you never really studied the subject, just read 1984 and Animal Farm. Bitch about capitalism 99% of the time, but balk when someone suggests communism as an alternative. Far right-wing fascists constantly bitch about cultural degeneracy under capitalism, while remaining fanatically opposed to Marxism with no discernible reason, save for your affinity for historical nationalism.
Let me do 32, 33, and 34 because I love these. These are my favorites.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, 32. If you're an anarchist, keep pointing out the failure of Marxism while ignoring the fact that your ideology has a 100% failure rate throughout its entire history. Blame those failures on communists or stronger military powers. Ignore the fact that the most wonderful society is worthless if it can't defend itself from reaction. 33. Neo-Nazi. Communism is Jewish. Debate over. 34. Neo-hippie.
Tibet. Yeah, no, the conspiracy of Judeo-Bolshevism, I think, is especially sinister, considering that the new fad right now amongst right-wingers is cultural Marxism, which is just an anti-Semitic, like, dog whistle, I believe. And yeah, so I love those three because especially the anarchists, I always listen to them talk about, like criticizing like aspects of the Soviet Union that I'm just like, have you ever picked up a book in your life? Do you know how to read? Question mark. I don't know if they do. Okay, William, number 35.
I'm not sure I've ever met a neo-hippie, maybe just a hippie LARPer.
I think that would qualify. That would qualify.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's like you hear people talking about the Beatles on NPR and they're totally foaming at the mouth. It's insane. They're probably just like them. Anyway.
Yep. Oh yeah.
35. Constantly condemn the genocide that 35. Constantly condemn the genocide that allegedly occurred under Mao while ignoring the U.S. relations with China established by Nixon and the massive role China has played in the modern U.S. economy. When you want to talk positively about China, it's a capitalist country. If you need to criticize it, it's communist.
Yeah, this genocide that occurred under Mao, what's the context for this? Because I'm honestly not too familiar with Maoism and Maoist China.
Oh, there you've
They're
got
just
me. I'm
calling it
not.
family
I'm not an
genocide,
expert
right?
on. I'm not an expert on China. Um, and we have some comrades who are. Um, but it has to do with economic dislocations having to do with the Great Leap Forward
Mm,
that was basically badly planned, badly organized. Um, were there shortages? Was there starvation? I believe there was. Was it on this 100 million people died scale? No. And it's also worth noting that, and you all know that I'm not a big fan of modern day China, but it's worth noting that there hasn't been another one of those cyclical famines, has there?
nope. I also think it's worth noting that right now the common criticism of China by liberals is the Uyghur genocide. I do want to give some context to this real fast. So the Uyghur are Muslim people who have lived in, I believe, northern China, in like this little part of northern China. And I will say there is a lot of cultural and political repression of the Uyghur people. There is what I would call a cultural genocide, as they're kind of forcing them basically to conform to Han Chinese cultural tradition, and has basically made it illegal to be Muslim over there. They have like even a law saying that you can't have like a beard that's too long, otherwise you look suspicious. So that is
Hmm.
a problem. That is incredibly problematic, to say the least. But genocide, that's just not happening. There's plenty of evidence proving that there is not a mass genocide going on of the Uyghur people, but I do still think that we should heavily criticize China for their what they're doing to them culturally and forcing them into Han Chinese, like basically forcing them to be Han Chinese, which they're not. Okay, number 36. Claim Marxism is not empirical. Neither are neoliberalism, democracy, or freedom. But don't worry about that.
We're
Okay.
going at a clip. I didn't think we would get through them, but we almost are.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so 37 always insist that despite the location, country, historical era, past experience, and all other factors, communists must want to recreate a modern day copy of Stalin's Russia and all that entails, according to you. Do not notice the inherent idiocy in this concept, such as your particular country being already industrialized and not having a historical problem of severe backwardness.
Yep. Yep. That's pretty par for the course. William, you want to do 38?
Sure. Learn to use the magic word totalitarian. This word allows you to link two ideological opposites, communism and fascism.
Yep. A lot of people like to say that there was like a double genocide happening to Jewish people in the Soviet Union, and to say that Stalin was somehow just as bad as Hitler, which is, I think, more than an insult on the name of Stalin.
It flies in the face of all reality. The Soviet Union encouraged Yiddish language schools, Yiddish language newspapers, magazines, films, theaters. Um, Jewish communists were among the highest, ranking members of the Soviet Party, including Stalin's own advisors and inner circle. And Stalin was so anti-Semitic that both of his children had Jewish spouses and he had Jewish grandchildren. That's how anti-Semitic it was.
So anti-Semitic. So
Yes.
incredibly anti-Semitic. So I will go ahead and read number 39. Ignore the fact that socialist states experienced more economic problems parallel to the number of market reforms they made. Hmm. Well, we'll just let that one sit. All right, who wants to read number 40, the very last one? William, you want to read that
Let
one?
me do it. Let me do it.
Oh,
I want
no.
to do it.
Alpha. Okay, okay, you got it.
Okay. 40. when challenged about numbers or historical context, resort to labels like ruthless tyrant, cruel murderer, and such. Remember, people like Stalin were mass murderers because of all the people they killed. And we know they killed all those people because they were mass murderers. It totally tracks.
Yep. No need for further explanation. We did it, guys.
No circular reasoning there.
Nope, none at all.
Well, we talked about kind of how the right wing has right wing thinking, whether or not it's explicitly religious or not, does have this religious aspect to it. We mentioned that earlier. Well, here you go. It's the same kind of that same kind of mystical, religious, idealist thinking that says the Bible is true because it's the word of God. How do you know it's the word of God? Because the Bible tells me.
Yep. And it's very interesting circular thinking, the way that anti-communists try to frame these. And so we actually finished 20 minutes early with this list of 40 different
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is, usually these things go much longer for me, 40 tips for anti-communists. However, I wanted to add something a little bit here, which is that a lot of these anti-communist arguments, as you can probably already tell, dear listener, are bullshit. And a lot of arguments made by anti-communists tend to boil down to the 100 million number. Communism was so oppressive, and something along the lines of social repression, like against Jewish people, and economic, like being economic, the economic debilitation of communism, which is all just untrue. But yeah, I think that it's interesting, especially because we are living under a regime which is so incredibly fascistic and reactionary, that going over these, I feel like, is almost necessary to kind of hammer home with people that, like, these are not good arguments.
No, they're not. And that's why I said earlier that people get away with stuff in academia if it's in any way related to Soviet studies or anything having to do with a communist nation, Cuba or China or what have you, that if they were to do it in any other area, they'd be laughed out of the classroom. They'd
Oh
be
yeah.
laughed out of the classroom and pilloried in the profession.
Yeah. And I think that especially with the way that I guess Americans have been so propagandized, it's hard. Like, I was talking to a girl actually when I flew out to Spain about a month ago to see my partner who was there for a program. Um, I was sitting next to this girl and her boyfriend on the plane, and she talked about how she went to Cuba
Oh,
for vacation a few summers ago, which I thought was really cool. I was talking to her about it, and she's like, "Yeah, they can only use energy in the morning and at night, 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours at night. Isn't that so, like, crazy and oppressive?" And I just was thinking, well, girl, the embargo, like, you do realize that they don't have access to other end, like, they literally don't have access. You do realize that, right? It's just lacking so much context that they think that a lot of Americans think that communists just do these irrational things because they just want to do them, because why not? Because, well, oppression, why wouldn't you? But then when you look at the actual context of why things happen, this isn't to say that they're all good or that they're all acceptable, but there are reasons. It's not just it's not just like, why not, you know?
and there's also the opposite end that you sometimes hear from people on the left. What Michael Parenti calls left anti-communists, who will then look at mistakes and errors and wrong things in the communist society. And they will say, "Oh, this is a sign of corruption, of betrayal. The revolution betrayed, and blah blah blah." How about just Occam's razor? Comrades made a bad call. Comrades screwed up, made a mistake. Happens.
Yeah, no, exactly. William, did you have anything you wanted to add, or any thoughts on this list?
Um, yeah, for me, the human nature is the one I get most often. And I know there's a really simple response right in the Communist Manifesto. But what came to my mind when my dad told me that argument, what came to my mind in the moment is that even if even if human interests do contradict the I don't know, even if human interests try to get human nature tries to get in the way in some form or another, the class interests will be stronger at a certain point than anything else. That's when communism will that's when communism will advance, right? I don't remember exactly what I said.
Here's another thing that you could use to counter that human nature argument, because we're not saying that human beings are saintly, that human beings, give everything to others. No, human beings act out of a sense of self-interest. But the point is that sense of self-interest depends on community. And I'll give you one example. Imagine, do a mental image right now of me standing in front of a blackboard and taking my fingernails and right down that blackboard. I bet you both of you are like flinching right now.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't love that.
Yeah.
Why? It's not your fingers. Why do you have that reaction? It's not your fingers. You have that reaction because, oh my God, I wouldn't want that to happen to me. There's the human nature. I don't want bad things to happen to someone else because I don't want them to happen to me.
Yeah, there's a sense of like this whole idea.
Solidarity.
Yeah, it's like this whole idea of putting yourself in someone else's position and realizing like um like I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to be out in the cold trying to find somewhere to stay for the night. I work at a gas station, and this is a little personal anecdote. Um, during from the hours of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., the lobby is closed and we only do window service. And I work the overnight shift. I'm the graveyarder, as they say. And last week there was a big blizzard in Champaign. We got, I want to say about an inch of snow, maybe a half inch. And there was this homeless woman that came to my window, and I guess she first tried to pull the doors and realized they were closed, and she was very nice, and she was like, I was just trying to get warm. And I've been told by my boss in the company that I am under no circumstances am I allowed to let someone in. Um, of course, I'm also on 24-hour surveillance at the
Mm.
store, so it's kind of hard to break that rule. Um, so what I did instead is I bought her a cup of coffee and some hand warmers and from the Hot Hands, and gave her directions to the closest other gas station that had their lobby open that I knew of. No, this was a small gesture, and this isn't me tooting my own horn or saying that I did something
Right.
amazing, but this is saying that doing nothing and just watching someone out there. She was sitting there by my window freezing. The least I could do was spend $2 on a coffee for her, and these things, I feel like in this current age that we're living in, it's very discouraged to want to help someone else just because you can. It's like, well, why would you do that? Why would you waste your money or your time on this? What are you going to get? It's always the question of what do you get from it? Well, in that instance, I'm not looking for anything from her. All I want to do is make sure that she's warm. Um, and I think that a lot of there are people in this world who would say, well, you shouldn't do that because, she probably put herself in that situation, or she can take care of herself. I recently had a conversation with one of my own family members who said, I was talking to them about a friend who is undocumented, or who has undocumented family, and they almost got caught by ICE. And I'm like, what should I do? And my family member was like, why would you do anything? What can you do? What can I do? it's just it's an interesting time we live in, to say the least, is what I'm saying.
You read to your family member that people, for some reason, people call it a poem. It's not. But that famous statement by Pastor Niemöller, first they came for the communists.
Yep. And that's something that I wish I could push with people more, that I often want to say on this show, is whenever someone makes the argument about, well, there's nothing that we can do for immigrants, or there's nothing we can do for, black people who are dealing with, police repression or something, all I say to them is, okay, replace that word, immigrant, black person, whatever marginalized community we're talking about who's currently being victimized by the state, with the word Jew.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't do anything for the Jews. They should have, my family member told me, well, maybe they should have made an escape plan before they immigrated here. Maybe they should have known what things were going to be like after 2016 when Trump got elected. And all I can say is, oh, so the Jews should have known that they were going to get genocided in the 1930s. They should have known better. Is that what you're saying? Because that's very much the argument that many make.
One of my all-time favorite movies is A Man for All Seasons, which came out in the mid 60s, like 67 or so, and it won the Academy Award for Best Film of that year. And it's not to get too into it, but it's the story of Thomas More
Yeah.
and how he stood up to Henry VIII and ended up losing his head for it. But there's one scene in the film where there's a shady character who the Thomas More's family realizes has been sent to spy on him and report back to the monarchy, to the king. And one character says, "Arrest him," because More was Lord Chancellor of England at the time, which is the equivalent of modern day prime minister. So one character says, "Arrest him," and the other person goes, and More goes, "For what?" And the other person goes, "Because he's bad." Well, did he break the law? Uh, no. Well, then he can go until he broke the law. The devil himself could go unless he broke the law. And here's the crucial part. Then the other character goes, "Oh, so you'd give the devil benefit of law?" And Moore responds, "And what? So you'd break down every law to get after the devil, wouldn't you?" And the other guy goes, "Of course I would. I'd break down every law in England for that." And Moore then turns around, and here's the kicker, the line that always gets me. Moore turns around and says, "Oh, really? And if you did that, tore down every law to get after the devil, where would you stand in the winds that would blow then?" I
Whoa.
I give the devil benefit of law for my own safety's sake.
Yeah. I mean, that's like that is exactly the point that we're trying to get at here. Is it's like, once you've broken down all means of recourse and are saying, well, we just need to round them all up. I mean, I think this is especially true for what's going on with the genocide in Gaza and Sudan and all of these different places, but especially Gaza, with the direct funding that American taxpayers have been in many ways forced into. This is, if we are going to allow this to happen to these people, we are essentially allowing it to happen to ourselves.
Yeah. And again, that line has stayed with me for decades. I first saw that movie when I was a kid, and it stayed with me for decades. Yeah, I would give the devil benefit of law for my own safety's sake.
Yeah,
You
I
tear
mean,
down all the laws, and where are you going to stand in the winds that will blow then?
I think that's a very good. I think I think that's food for thought. Very like that's something I'll be thinking about for a while. William, any final comments before we finish up here today?
No, it was a very good, very nice being on here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show again, Camilo, and for the first time, William. I'd love to have you guys back. This was such a fun little segment to do, especially, as we prepare for future episodes. I know we have some really big stuff planned. The show is expanding a little bit, which is really exciting. And so I'm just excited to see where things go. And I appreciate you guys being on here tonight.
Happy to be back. It's fun. It was fun. Now, one thing that we should do when next time we decide to do another lighthearted episode is let's do those uh, left takes on why did the chicken cross the road?
Yes, I would
Leave
love
it to your audience to wonder what that's about.
Yeah, I will leave it to them. Comment, listeners, comment in the comment section if you would like to do, if like us to do an episode on that. And even if you don't, we still will. So thank you guys again. I'm going to go ahead and